Alright, iPhone 10. This is going to be an honest review here of the brand new fancy flagship device from Apple. Stay tuned for a fanboy-free look at Apple's latest offering for 2017-2018, the iPhone 10 or iPhone X. Alright, so jumping right in, the first thing you'll notice is that the hardware is completely different on the iPhone 10. This is Apple's probably biggest leap forward in design since the iPhone 5 was released. And what they've done is they've removed the home button. So as you can see on this phone here, there is no home button on it. So it is a complete front cover of glass and a complete back cover of glass. What they've done in order to get rid of the home button is use something called Face ID and facial unlocking software. And we'll talk about that here in a second. Other things to talk about in the hardware are there is still a power button on this side of the device. So you still have that same traditional sort of wake unlock power button. You have volume rockers up and down on this side of the device. You have your vibration switch on this side of the device. And that's pretty much it. You have no headphone jack. You have a single lightning port in the bottom. It's very, very clean, very sharp looking, very, very well designed in my opinion. I mean, it is almost like a black chrome in terms of its color for this model and in terms of its sort of overall sleekness and build quality. Very, very well done, I think, in Apple's design language. Dual camera system with a vertical dual camera lens. We'll talk about this more when we talk about the camera. But otherwise, the hardware, it's waterproof, you know, to a certain degree. I forget what the spec is, but it is something that you can be submerged for a short period of time or splash proof. Certainly, you don't have to worry about putting it in rice anymore. You definitely don't want to take it swimming in the ocean, but if it does take an accidental dip into the sink or into the toilet, it should survive that no problem. So now we'll talk about the software and what sort of makes the phone unique. Like I said, facial recognition to unlock it. So if you see this little lock icon here right now, I can put in my code and get in, or I can just simply raise the phone to my face, and I'll do that sort of off camera. I'll twist it, and you guys should be able to see the phone unlock. Boom! I put my camera away from the, put my face away from the camera, and you're allowed to get into the phone. And so one of the big questions people ask is, well, how do I use this thing? What now? What? There's no home button, right? Let's say I go into an app here, and then I want to get out. Well, what do I do? So you actually swipe up from the bottom. You can see that little line right there. So you slide up to get back to the home screen. Otherwise, using the phone is identical to every other iPhone you've used. You can slide over. You can hit the app icon to get into the apps. But the up motion will take you back to the home screen. And then somebody might ask about, well, multitasking. Okay, so how do you multitask? So you actually come up and hold, and then here's your list of apps. So it's a little bit of a different UI than you're used to seeing on most of the iPhones. The other thing, in order to get into the settings, you actually slide down from the top corner. That will get you into sort of the quick access settings. You can also slide down from the other corner to relock the device. So a couple different things in the UI here. Also, in order to get into things like the flashlight, you can hold on the home button here or hold on the camera icon here to get into the camera. And then obviously that's to get back home. So different user experience for Apple. It's kind of a departure from their normal, especially not having that home button. It's a big deal for a lot of people because that is a traditional way to use an iPhone, and so it's going to shake things up a lot. And the rumor is that Apple is going to go to Face Unlock for everything from here on out and get rid of home buttons in all their devices, which is going to be interesting for a lot of people in order to kind of change that up. Apple's really, really a stickler for change. Other things to notice about the phone, obviously with it here on the table, big, big, big screen. I mean, corner to corner, edge to edge, really beautiful. And they've switched to OLED, which means it's similar to like a Galaxy panel. And in fact, the panel's made by Samsung. Beautifully sharp, awesome to look at. I mean, the screen just dominates this phone. It fills it edge to edge. It's super, super beautiful, color accurate, and really, really contrasty. The only thing that's annoying is the screen cut out there. You really notice that, especially with things like YouTube and watching videos. You know, it's really frustrating to have that stupid little gap that's right there. You know, you can see it, like if we were on this video, you can kind of tell how you'll either get letterboxing, right, and you'll end up with bezels like this. You know, let's get into the actual video, right? So it's kind of frustrating to have this like weird sort of like pixel box, you know, letterbox thing, or you get the notch. So and apps aren't really built for it yet completely. Like, you know, if I go into Google Voice, you can see how it's just got that letterbox at the top and at the bottom. So it's going to take a while for developers to sort of figure out the notch and to make the phone apps run better with the iPhone 10 display. But otherwise, the display is fantastic. Apple has warned people about burn-in. OLED is susceptible to burn-in, so if you keep the phone on for extended periods of time and the screen is in the same position, so like if you were to have, you know, the phone on for 10 hours a day on your home screen with the same app layout, you may actually get burn-in, which means that the pixels may end up keeping those images burned into them. Which is a bad sign. So only time will tell whether that's a problem for a lot of people or not. It shouldn't be, but you never know what'll happen, and you'll never know how people end up using their phone. So the other great thing to talk about with this camera, with this phone, is the camera, and that's what a lot of people really want it for, is the awesome new features in the camera. Things like portrait mode, the dual lens setup, which we've seen in the 7, since the 7 Plus with its zooming capability, but the quality of the images is really great. And so if you look at this, I will launch the camera, I will turn it on to portrait mode, and I'll take a photo of this using portrait mode, and I'll show you exactly kind of what portrait mode can do for you. But I first have to be able to take an actual picture and show you the benefits of portrait mode and also some of the drawbacks. So if we come back here, I took a picture of this lens cap, right? In portrait mode, what it's trying to do is it's trying to actually isolate the foreground from the background. And so if you look at this picture and you look at sort of how the camera, how the image is laid out, right? You can see that there are background blur. So that what Apple's trying to do is it's trying to isolate the foreground from the background and make the background blurry. And you can see the detail here, right? So it's got the sharpness on this part of the lens cap, but it's actually sort of blurred the middle. So this is sort of a bad example of what portrait mode can do. And I've learned that portrait mode on this phone isn't perfect. And you can really tell in certain areas, and it's particularly on edges where it can get screwy. But if we go to, like, for example, some of the other pictures, if we go back to the camera, let's go back, you can see what it's trying to do. And you can actually change the lighting, which is sort of cool, right? So you can like do these things called like stage light mono, stage light, contour light, studio light, natural light, and that will change how the image looks. And so if you're trying to take a picture of somebody's face, you can do these really wild things. Like, so I'll go to stage light mono, and then I'll turn the phone around, and then I'll go put myself in here, and then it will process it, maybe. Apparently not. Maybe I have to get my face better in there. Background is too far. Okay, so there we go. So I'll take it off here. We'll put it in my face. And we'll see that this is actually a little bit... Oh, there we go. So here's an example of when it actually works. And I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit gimmicky, especially for an Apple product, but I guess it does work. I don't know. If you look at in my side-by-side review of the Apple iPhone 10 and the Pixel, you'll see that I think Google does it a little bit better with their phones and their software. I don't know. I'm not really on the I'm not really on board with the way Apple implements their studio lighting portrait mode in their phone. But otherwise, the camera in the phone is really great. And I'll show you just a really quick example of that. We'll just switch this back over to the regular camera. We'll take it off portrait. We'll go to photo. And I'm just going to take a picture here off camera of the colors in my yard. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. This is just a unzoomed in standard stock image. We'll rotate this around and we'll just check it out, you know, on the nice new OLED panel. And I mean, the color, the sharpness and the color accuracy on the camera is just really awesome. I mean, you can see the detail here. You can see the colors in the leaves. You can see how sharp and how nice it is. I mean, it is definitely a step up in terms of camera quality from the 7, probably even the 8 too. I mean, the tests are saying that the camera is really awesome. But the image quality between the two, from the 8 and the 10 are about the same. I mean, the cameras are identical, but you get a step up from the 7, and it is very nice. And I would definitely recommend this iPhone if you're interested in buying it just for the camera, and the screen is definitely worth it. So the next thing we'll talk about really quickly is sort of what, you know, is it worth buying this device for $1,000? I mean, Apple is kind of crazy with their price here for 2017, 2018. Are you really going to drop $1,000 US for this thing? I mean, it's a lot to stomach. You know, it is probably one of the nicest design iPhones I've seen in a really long time. I really think it's a sleek, slim, awesome, sexy phone. I would really like to use it I think the trouble for me is Apple is still stuck in the world of not allowing people to have default applications. And so, for example, like when I plug this phone into my iPhone or my Apple CarPlay device in my car, I have to use Siri and I have to use Apple Maps, and that's really frustrating for me because oftentimes I'll want to use Google Maps or Google Navigation, and I'm stuck using the built-in Apple stuff, and that's a bummer because I really don't like it, and it tends not to work so well. And so, you know, for me, spending $1,000 on a phone that I can't customize, I can't do exactly what I want to do with it, it's kind of a deal breaker. I think Apple is on the right path here with their edgeless, you know, or bezel-less, you know, corner-to-corner screen. The build quality is great. The software is really cool. The camera features are fun. But for me, I'm still going to use Android. I'm still going to use my Pixel. I simply cannot spend $1,000 on a device that won't let me do exactly what I want to do, which is unfortunate because I really would like to support Apple, and I really would like to, you know, use an American company and use something that I think is really cutting edge in terms of its technology. But until they free up their little difference with their software, you know, I guess it's, you know, just lock and stronghold on people, I'll be using something different. So hope you guys enjoyed this little quick honest review of the Apple iPhone 10. Don't forget to check out all my other videos on YouTube, and rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.